Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
Hello, whatever time it is you might be listening to this on the Temple Beth Am podcast. We're here to study some Torah. We're a week removed from last week when we were in the immediate aftermath of a catastrophe that hasn't gotten smaller or any better. At some point, it'll be the case that our programs at class at Temple Beth Am will happen sort of as usual. We will gather to pray and to study, and we won't be doing regular check-ins. I don't know that we're there yet because there's so much on people's hearts and minds. I wanted to give 3 minutes as we gather to study the tradition, if there's something that people want to air or process, as we are now 11 days from something which doesn't even have a name yet, right? Well, one day it will, right? I don't know when the Yom Kippur War got named the Yom Kippur War. I don't know when the Six-Day War got named the Six-Day War, but at some point this event in the history of the Jewish people will have a name. It doesn't have one yet, but you all know what I'm referring to. I'll leave a little bit of space in case people want to share or vent or talk. Yes. Let's take the microphones off the thing. It's just much easier to pass that way.
Yeah. Just two updates first, that President Biden was seeking to give the greatest aid to Israel possible, the largest in history, as well as providing for $100 million for essentially Palestinians to do that. And my understanding is that that is, I just hope that both of those things pass. And there's also statements by the United States that the attack on the hospital in Gaza was not by Israel. And I think that's very important, because that's being used to smear Israel's name. And I've been in one of the things that just really struck me was I was in contact with my family in Israel. I've got cousins there, but I spoke to one of my cousins who is here, and she said that, it doesn't matter what these other people think. It's something that's going to go on. It's going to be, Israel is going to do what it's going to do. And even if you were on the battlefield and then you got an order, you'd have to follow the order of what's taking place. And it just struck me, and it was a real revelation for me. I hadn't thought about it in that way, from the Israeli perspective, in that way that, they don't really have a choice of what's going on. It's kind of like we don't have a choice of what's going on if there's redistricting problems in gerrymandering in Alabama or something, that we have no direct control over that. We have no direct control over what's going on. We can show solidarity and support and express our feelings of support for Israel, which is very important. But in the end, we don't have any direct control. And that's very disheartening on one level, but it's very heartening on the other to be able to be there and to say Hatikva every day at services, and to pray for the welfare of the hostages and Israeli soldiers. And it's making me rethink and reevaluate everything that's going on. I'm just hoping and praying that everything goes well.
Thank you, Ellen. Joanna?
I just wanted to share that I saw that the Beth Am community promoted the fast day last week that Hadar and a number of others shared about, in terms of one way of demonstrating our support for Israel and the direness of the situation. I chose to participate in the fast, and being situated on the East Coast, I wanted to participate in davening that day that was reflective of a fast day. Due to my teaching job, I could not participate in Shacharit. And I could not confirm a local synagogue that would be doing a fast day mincha. So I said, you know what? I'm close enough now in New Jersey to Hadar, New York. I will get to their mincha. It was one of the most powerful davening experiences of my life. First of all, walking into the room and realizing how many felt like I did, 300 people for a weekday mincha. And then when Rabbi Tucker led davening, and he broke several times during the repetition of the Amidah, like either visibly crying or even just he couldn't continue. He just paused. And the davening and the first thing I should mention is after Kedusha, nearly everyone remained standing. And I think most of the time, most people would sit. And the first thought I had in my mind is that this is like Ne'ilah. This is such a last desperate plea that we have at Ne'ilah when we also choose to remain standing. It was not announced or asked of people to remain standing. And then those moments when Rabbi Tucker couldn't continue and we stood there silently, it reminded me of a poem I read years ago about how music is as much about the rest between the notes as it is about the notes themselves. The kavanah in that silence was one of the most powerful things I've ever felt. And then at the end, when we did Avinu Malkeinu, Rabbi Tucker announced we wouldn't be doing in call repeat the traditional verses, but selected verses that he had chosen that he felt were reflective of this moment. And that call and response of these lines that hit like they never had before, culminating with the final singing of Avinu Malkeinu, it was... The entire experience was one of the most powerful davening moments of my entire life.
Thank you for that, Joanna. Yeah, I mean, 300 people for a daily afternoon minyan. We never get more than 200 at Beth Am. I was talking to Tom Fieldsmeyer at Minyan this morning, and we were both saying that every line of liturgy, and I wrote about this at some point in the last 10 days. I don't remember where I wrote it and with whom I shared it. Every line of liturgy seems to be just penetrating, either penetrating with horror or realism or comfort. It's making me think about, our ancients, right? The ancient psalm writers 3,000 years ago who saw something about how Israel was under siege and how they responded to where they thought God was, and the liturgists of 2,000 years ago, and how so much has changed and how so little has changed, and what a treasure it is to have. There are days, even as a traditional rabbi, I feel imprisoned by a prayer obligation that has me say words that were written thousands of years ago, where it's hard to make the prayers of someone else's articulation the prayers of your own heart. And there are some days it's a treasure to basically walk through Jewish history just by reading the Siddur and feel a kinship to those who experience what they experience and turn that into words. And it's just been an overwhelm through the liturgy the last 10 or 11 days. Barry?
Personally, in nights 2:30 in the morning, hearing the voices, the screaming, the people, the family, the individuals, the torture that was going on, repeating over and over. I can't get rid of it. I'm just hearing all that and seeing what I shouldn't be seeing, and it's so deep. I'm really in pain.
Thank you, Barry. Rosemary, and we'll have maybe one or two more, and then we will study Torah today because that's our purpose.
For over 20 years, I'm doing a lot of research on history, and it shows me how much when I discuss with people, they don't know the past, what has happened. That's one of the ignorances that helps the new things happening. Last night, finally, I posted a little of my family on Facebook just to show that this existed and it exists always. And when 2 years ago, they were doing the same killings in South Armenia, in Artsakh, or Azerbaijan was doing, nobody cared for it. and nobody wrote. Right now, they are putting 150 refugees out of the country, that little section, and nobody is writing about it. It's why Armenian 120,000 people are not as important as Palestinian people. Where are the just people which are fighting in the streets? They don't talk even about that. That's the first thing. And the second is, in history, Iranian Revolution, which happened, the real reason was one thing. It was a movie that burned in Abadan, which is the petroleum place. 450 people were inside the movie, and 3 people went. They threw a can inside the movie. Before that, they had closed all the exits, and the entire movie burned. And all the people inside, women, children, they were kind of modest family people. It was a little bit, not against the Shah, but it was just a little more open. So the Iranian Revolution started from there. It became strong. The next day, people like right now, which they are in the streets, are youth in New York, Washington, nowhere knows about that. And they said that's the government who put. What was the Shah's interest to put to burn people, 400 people in a movie?
Yeah.
What was he going to gain? Nobody asked that. That has been repeated everywhere. Nazis has done, Iranian has done, Americans have done, not very long ago. And they put the blame on other people. And that's something, I'm so surprised that everybody is saying, wow, Israel, why should Israel put a bomb in Gaza to kill people in hospital? Where in Sheba, like yesterday, I just heard Yitzhak Christ, Dr. Christ, which is the director, he said right now they are healing a woman who came there. Her child had a problem from Gaza, and he's living in Israel because the child needed marrow and nobody's marrow matched. So they made the wife went back, became pregnant, came back, so her baby will give the marrow to her brother. Yeah. If they are doing this for a Palestinian in Sheba, why should they throw the bomb in there?
Yes.
And we were discussing 2 weeks ago.
Rosemary, just a little bit more, because I want to get to the class.
Just one thing, sorry.
It's okay.
We were discussing about the class, actually. And we were saying that when I was saying when the frogs were out, when it was killed, there was a lot of smell and rotten things outside. And he was telling me that exactly that's what God has planned, because in Egypt, there was a lot of perfumes. It has been always, we know Cleopatra or others walked with it. So one plague had so many things inside. It has, like frogs, it had the rotten smell that probably bothered a lot the Pharaoh. If God thinks all those little things, I think he will think big things now.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosemary. Renee, one more very brief comment, and I want us to jump into the text.
I just want to say that, Barry, I feel very much like you do. And the only thing that's bringing me any solace is trying to do different kinds of programs that I can get involved in. And one of the recent ones I wanted to share with you is something called Challah for Chayalim. And when you sign up, you're given 10 names of Chayalim to pray for when you do the Afreshat Challah. And I wanted to share the challah that I made this week in the insignia of the IDF in their skut.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Renee. We say at a Shiva Minyan that one of the reasons why a piece of Torah is shared at a Shiva Minyan is one, Le'ilui Neshama, for the ascent of the soul, the idea that Torah study dedicated in someone's name helps the settling of the soul of the departed, and that it's a comfort to study Torah, and that it's so much of a comfort to study Torah, we're prohibited from doing so on Tisha B'Av. So in both of those veins, let's study Torah, both dedicated to the souls of so many who have lost their lives, and as a comfort for us as we hold on to this ongoing national pain and mourning. Okay. We are on chapter 8, and we are about to read verse 16. Chapter 8, verse 16 of the book of Shemot, to remind us where we were last time. Verse 15 was Vayomru Achar. We spent a lot of time on this, but just to give us some momentum, by Yomru Achar Tumim El Paro, the soothsayers, the magicians said to Pharaoh, Etzba Elohim Hi, this must be the finger of God, what we're witnessing. By Chazak with Paro, Pharaoh's heart remained hard. Below Shema Alehem, did not listen to them, pay attention. Kasher Diber Adonai, as God had, I think a better word here is predicted. Right? And we talked the last time was talk about, again, when God had predicted that this would be the pattern. Now we're on verse 16. Rashi is quiet until verse 17. Norm, you have a question? No. Oh, do you want to read?
Yes. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, and God said to Moses, Hashkem baboker v'hisyatzev lifnei Pharaoh, go in the morning and present yourself, place yourself, where Pharaoh will come, in Pharaoh's face, so to speak. Hine yotze hamoima, when he goes to the waters, v'amarta elov, and say to him, Ko amar Adonai, so says Hashem, Shalach ami, let my people go, ve'avduni, which I love this word. Ve'avduni is so wonderfully ambiguous in English, because it could mean, and let them worship me, or it could mean, and they will serve me, or and they will work for me, or they will become my servants, perhaps as opposed to your servants.
Yes, we've spoken a lot, and we'll continue to speak about the way in which the root Ayin Bet Daled works its way, pun intended, through this narrative, and the move from being slaves to a tyrant to being servants of a benevolent God, right? That's really the meta theme of the book of Exodus. While everyone is holding on to that verse, put a pin in it and turn back to chapter 7, verse 15. Just another place where we have God instructing Moshe to meet Pharaoh by the water. Rashi spent some time there discussing why that was the exact spot. Rashi does not say anything about it here, but just remind us in chapter 7, verse 15, Lech el Paro, God says to Moshe, go to Pharaoh, Baboker in the morning. In our verse here we have Hashkem Baboker, which means to get up early in the morning. It's the same verse used to describe what Avram did on the day of the Akedah. Hashkem means to do something early and with the urgency. Hine yotzei hamaima, he is coming out to the water. B'nitzavta likrato, you should place yourself there to meet him. In our verse here, it was v'hityatzev lifnei paro. I like how Norm did it. Place yourself in Pharaoh's face, because the word lifnei is, we translate it as before or in the presence of, but it's from the word panim. So go into the face of Pharaoh. Likrato al sfatei or, on the edge of the river. So once again, this is Pharaoh, Moses being told by God to go meet Pharaoh by the water, which has been the source of the initial plagues. Will not be the source of the other plagues, but this is where the event is taking place. Rashi's quiet on our verse. I just wanted you to see a parallel verse back there. Norm raised the question of the Avduni. Again, not the first time that the rationale for the Exodus is for a different type of avodah or avdut. Anything else that people want to ask or say in the verse before we move forward on it? Any verb, any phraseology or content that begs a question? If not, we'll go forward.
Is this the first time that the phrase "Let my people go" is used by Moshe?
No.
Okay.
If you go several times, in fact, right after the verse we just read, if you look at verse 7:16, which is, so it's literally one chapter ago, same verse. But Marta Eliav, you should say to him, Adonai Elohev Hayivrim Shlachani Elecha, God, who is the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, Lemor, to say, Shlachata mi bi'avduni, send my people that they may serve me. Joanna.
Both here and in the verse quoted in chapter 7, I don't think this occurred to me in chapter 7, but if you imagine this scene in your mind, right? Hityatzev lifnei paro is to stand like erect, stand tall, at attention, erect, and picture Paro's position. Like presumably he's bathing in the water, he's crouched down. And I just think that imagery of Moshe standing tall over a crouched down Paro says something in that alignment in terms of the power relationship here, that is interesting, at least to me.
As if God is telling Moshe, stand tall in front of this, human avowed demigod. Yeah.
Right. Who may appear tall to you and everyone else, but look, I have made him in this crouched down position. He's not as powerful or as fearful as you might think. Yeah.
It is interesting to wonder, is there a reason, or is it kind of a nothing, that back in chapter 7 it was v'nitzavta, so the form is more plain, and here it's v'hityatzev, which is more reflexive. I don't know what, it's to be presented versus to present yourself. Are those just two ways of saying the same thing, right? The Torah is allowed to have synonyms even across tenses and forms, or if there's some way we're supposed to understand the hityatzev in the imperative, you're going to do something to yourself such that you will be more presentable, more of a firm presentation in front of Pharaoh. Hard to know. Onkelos translates it not particularly interestingly in that regard. Rick.
Hi. I wanted to bring out the yativ on ko. That wasn't there the first time.
Remind everyone what a yativ is, because not everyone gets why that would be interesting.
So in this sentence in verse 16, after God says, Ve'amarta elav, that's with the revia on top. That's the same in the other verse. So it's like setting up, and this is what you should say. Here it's ko, it's a dramatic wake up, Amar Adonai. It's different. And ever since Abe Berman did ko's all over that one Haftorah, Larry and I have been very aware of the word ko and how it grabs attention. In the previous verse, not exactly 15, but 16 is Ve'amarta elav. It starts, and there it's a different kind of announcement. There it's an Adonai, Elohei ha'ivrim. So, and then there it's Ve'avduni bamidbar, and here it's just Ve'avduni. So it's kind of more dramatic and quicker to the point. It's abbreviated.
Yeah.
So it's just some observations on the trope there.
Yeah, the word ko, which is translated into an English word that's a throwaway word, like thus, right? Is often gets a sort of a one syllable dramatic note called the yativ. Sometimes it can be more one syllable, but you can do it in one syllable that turns it from just a filler word to a trumpet blaring. And some people's versions of the yativ are more dramatic than others, right? I remember discussing with my tutor, since yativ,
Myrna Zeret.
Yes. So if you have enough syllables, it's a three note note. So yeah,
3 letters. 3 syllables is very low.
Right. So it's yativ, dum dum dum.
Yeah.
Have only one syllable. Do you do ko or just ko? Right. However you truncate it, you have to hold on to the sense that this is an announcement of something significant musically. Yeah.
Can I add something else? I was teaching the 5th grade, Eile Toldot Noach, and then Eile Toldot Shem. It's the same yativ. It grabs the reader's attention, the listener, right? These are illiterate people listening to somebody read it. No offense to our people, but it's the drama of listening to the music go way up high.
Yeah. Stevie, what did you say about letters?
As I recall, the rule is the yativ can only appear on a word with 3 or fewer letters.
Really?
I believe that's correct. Yeah. Rick?
I've never paid attention to it, but now I'm sure that I will.
But yes, the word yativ could not have a yativ.
Except on the music page.
The word onomatopoeia is not an onomatopoeia. Okay, Tova? Should be.
For the record, the ko that I learned is actually different from anyone else's that I've heard, because it's not melodic at all. It's just an exclamatory. It's just ko. But anyway, I may have missed a discussion related to this, and it's coming back to Joanne's visualization of Pharaoh crouching as he bathes in the Nile. But the image I get from this passage and the previous one is not him bathing, because they wouldn't have gone down to bathe in the Nile. It's rather him enacting a ritual role with regard to the power of the Nile itself. And so it's a different confrontation. It's not so much him in a vulnerable position as a human being, but confronting him in his role as a divine arbiter and challenging that, which I think is...
Stevie, yeah.
Just Ibn Ezra says something almost close to that. Without any knowledge of Egyptian culture, he says, Minhaga melachim letzeit baboker el hanahar ki ra'ot hamayim tov leineham, that it's the custom of kings to go down to the river in the morning because seeing the water is good for their eyes. But he's somehow, simply with the use of the text, understands this to be just a customary practice that they have. And so maybe he's, the text is sensitive to the Egyptian reality.
Yeah, I'll just put that on the screen quickly for everyone to look at. This is what Stevie was reading before. Once again, can someone just go to the computer, just move the thing on the right over? Minhag HaMelachim letzei baboker el hanahar. It's their custom, that's exactly as Stevie said, to go to the water because it's good for their eyes. Yeah. So you're saying, Stevie, that Ibn Ezra is agreeing this is not just a standard bathing, but some kind of regal ritual? Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a royal shahri.
Royal shahri. Okay. Yes, Marshall.
Again, I select Robert Alter as my primary source for translation. And he says, and the Lord said to Moses, rise early in the morning and station yourself before Pharaoh. Not just place yourself, but station yourself before Pharaoh. And then for the word ko, he says, look, you will be going out to the water and say to him, thus said the Lord, send off my people. Much more strong than let my people go.
Well, the look is a translation of the hine, not of the ko. The ko is the...
was that so?
Yeah, look is his translation of the hine. Instead of a behold, he's doing his look. But he's translating the ko differently.
You're right. Okay, right. I guess I misspoke there.
Yeah.
So
how does he do the ko?
For if you do not send off my people, I am about to send against you and against your servants.
No, that's the next verse. The next verse. Go to the previous verse. The end of the and say to him.
Thus said the Lord. Thus, right? Yeah. Send off my people. Shalach et ami.
Yeah.
V'yavduni, that they may worship me.
Yeah. Okay. Should we do another verse? Go to 17.
Yeah.
Okay. Norm, you're up still because you let's get more normal microphone.
It doesn't say shalach et ami, it says shalach ami.
Where's the direct object? Where's the et create the direct object?
The preposition sort of.
Yeah, but you're right, particularly because it got moved to verse 17. Shlach ami. That's interesting.
That's also a trope thing, Rabbi. In the first sentence in chapter 7, it's shalach et ami. So the verb shalach gets a little oomph there with the pashta, and then v'yavduni b'midbar, and then here it's shalach because the drama got into the ko. The shalach ami is just merchatz. Yichav v'yavduni. It's just a different structure.
Yeah, but that's arguing backwards because had the ed been there, the trup would have made a space for it, right? So the question is, why is the ed missing? I don't know. There's no obvious grammatical reason, right? Shalach is definitely a transitive verb. Ami is definitely the direct object. It's definitely a what do you call it? A proper direct object, and it should get the et. I don't know why it's not there. I had not noticed that. Shalach ami. Yeah, don't know. Good question. Okay, Norm.
Kiyim eincha mishalech es ami, but if you will deny and not send out my people, Hineni mashliach b'cha uvavadecha uviamcha uvavatecha, then we will do to you, or we'll send to you, and your servants and your people, and in the homes, the houses, the buildings, es ha'orov, the orov, which here is translated as insects. I think this is the one that I grew up thinking was locusts. Umolu batei Mitzrayim, es orov, v'gam ha'adama asher heim aleha, and the houses of Egypt shall be full of them, and also the ground where they are.
Good.
The land.
Good. Okay, so a lot going on in this verse. First, notice the double use of the root shalach in the first few words. If you are not willing to send off, dispatch my people, then I'm going to do my own dispatching, right? It's a little bit of midah connected midah. Circle in your mind the preposition becha, because that's what Rashi is going to focus on. What is the relationship between the sending here and the which means upon or to, which is not a direct object. It's not going to send something, but send something upon. It's going to be upon your servants, on you, and upon your servants, upon your houses and your people. And then the question that no one has ever been able to, nor will be able to answer conclusively: what is arov? Right? You ask your standard 14-year-old Jewish kid who studied the tradition, you'll get two primary answers, because there are two primary answers in the tradition. One of them is
wild beasts.
One of them is herd of wild animals, right?
Isn't it wild beasts in the Haggadah?
Insects, right? As swarms of insects or
wild beasts in the Haggadah. Isn't it referred to as wild beasts?
It's whatever people are guessing it is. We don't know, but those are the two. What's that?
Locust is later.
Yeah, arbeh is locusts. Arov is again either swarms of insects, but insects that must be different than kinim, otherwise it wouldn't be its own plague, or some kind of animals that are devouring, right? Mixed animals, right? And Stevie said mixed because of what the word arov means etymologically, and that's what Rashi is going to go on. Ayin reish bet means to mix up, right? Arev means to mix. Rashi refers to the darkness and the light that existed before God separated them, something that the human mind cannot comprehend. We cannot comprehend what it was before God separated the light from the dark. It's not just dusk. He calls it an erbuvia, a weirdo mixture of things that are all that should be separated but are all together. I used to think that the reason why our evening service is called Mari, and why that time of day is called Erev, is for the same reason, because it seems to be a mixture of light and dark. Tzioni Zevid is a professor of Bible at Ziegler, thinks that's not correct. No one knows for sure. He thinks it relates to an Akkadian word that the root means like a descent, like into a sheath, because it was when the sun was descending into what they thought was the pocket in which the sun would be overnight. He thinks it's that. He doesn't know for sure. To me, it makes more sense that it's this admixture, but then if it's that admixture, then it would be also the word for dawn, which it isn't. So maybe he's correct. But the reason I thought that is because that's what the root means. Eruv, right? What is an eruv? An eruv, there's several different types of eruvs, but it's a thing that delineates that everything inside of it is all mu'urav, is all mixed together, right? So we're now not 17 homes, we're one home, and we're sharing one halachic reality, right? So that's what the root means. What does it mean here? No one really knows, okay? Sue.
Well, I mean, I never thought about it because I was always busy cartoonizing the wild beasts,
right?
Right?
Like where the wild things are.
Right, exactly. But it couldn't, I mean, it wasn't, when you think about it, the thought that it was a herd of wild beasts, that the way I've always pictured it and never thought for one moment about anything else, it kind of can't be that. And
are you questioning God's omnipotence?
But then you said devouring. It was like a mixture of things that are devouring. So all of a sudden I've got in my mind, like some yucky rodent type, gobbling mix of species of who knows what that's crawling around.
Yeah.
So now I've got the rats in my head.
Yeah. So Rachel, Norm, and then Marshall, and then Rosemary. What's interesting, before we keep going into it, it's interesting that it's imprecise, right? The other plagues, assuming we know what Hebrew means, are precise, unless there is actually a meaning to the word arov that's just been lost. It might be that it once was precise, but it seems to be a word that means a yucky mixture. And it's up to us to figure out what that yucky mixture is. And unless I'm mistaken, it's the only plague that could possibly be referring to something vague as opposed to something specific. Rachel.
When we talked about first the blood, then the frogs, then the kinim, be the lice or gnats, we could kind of find a causal connection between one plague and the next.
Okay.
And I'm looking for that here. This seems to just, if it's referring to swarms of insects, it's following another swarm of insects. And if it refers to wild beasts, then it's absolutely unconnected to the previous plague.
Yeah, so either on this verse, Rashi's comment on this verse is going to try to talk about some of the patterns between all of them, including how this one fits in. Norm.
I just don't like it being called a herd of beasts, because herd implies something organized, even if it's self-organized by the animals. And Rashi is going to say that this is a mixture. And he says there's wild beasts, there's scorpions, there's snakes. It's just a whole lot of bad things happening to the animals. And it may be that it's wild animals from the wilderness are going to come and invade the settled part of Egypt.
Just a question. Could it possibly be implying you've had these individual miseries come upon you? Now they're all going to come upon you together. That is, could it be you're going to have frogs, you're going to have it all, but all together, all mixed together instead of singly?
That it's not a new thing, but it's an overwhelm of what had been. It's like interesting. Okay, Stevie? We'll just go down.
Just to add to that the kinim never left, right? So it could sort of be that you've got a certain insect right now, and then the rest of the insects are coming.
Interesting. Okay, so that might lead us in the insect direction as opposed to the where the wild things are direction. Marshall, we'll just go around. Marshall, Rosemary, then Leonard.
Again, on altar, first on the word shalach and shalach, it seems to suggesting here's a midah connected midah. If you don't send him forth, then I'm going to send. Number one. And secondly, in terms of the word arov, Alter has an interesting understanding of it. He says the Hebrew term arov only occurs here, and the only plausible derivation is from the verbal root, what it means to mix, which we just spoke about. Some medieval Hebrew commentators imagined this as a mingling of sundry beasts of prey, but this seems unlikely because, as verse 27 makes clear, the arov has infested the Egyptians rather than torn them limb from limb, and not one remained, probably suggests minuscule constituents of the horde. A plague of maddeningly noxious insects, this reflects what Rachel was saying, also makes a much better pair with the preceding plague. The King James Version swarm of flies is as good a guess as any, though it seems wise to avoid the word swarm in order not to introduce a misleading echo of the verb vayidrotetsu, which we have in Exodus chapter 1 and in chapter 7.
Great. Rosemary?
In the French book, I read that it was saying scorpions and snakes. And that's so normal because the geographical place of Egypt will admire to have them. I mean, they're nearby.
Yeah, so we'll see that in Rashi when we get there. Leonard?
All right, so I did a little research while I was waiting here.
You find the missing it?
I did find the missing it, yes. Mariv actually is the name for the service, is actually a medieval Hebrew word, and it's named after the word Mariv, which appears in the first benediction, where it means the setting of the sun.
Wait, say that again? Hamariv Aravim?
Exactly.
You're meaning calling the service that, is that right?
And
It used
the
to be called
service
Arvit.
was called that because it was called Mariv
Right.
because of that first benediction.
Right. In the Mishnah, the reference to that service is Arvit. So it's the same root, but a different noun.
Okay, and then in terms of the Arov, it's interesting that there's a Syriac word, Aruva, which sounds like an island in the Caribbean, which actually means a swarm of vermin or insects. So if we're going to go by cognates, it sounds like the insects win.
Yeah. Okay. Any others, Sue?
I vote for vermin.
I want to show you the root ayin resh bet in Hebrew is one of the most pluripotent roots in ancient biblical Hebrew and rabbinic Hebrew. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. I want you to show how many pages there are in Jastro of ayin resh bet. So there's the first one. And he compares it actually to Aleph Resh Bet, which is interesting, is Aleph Resh Bet is also how the word locust is spelled, Aleph Resh Bet Hey, to mix or to confuse. And that's the first one. There's also to put in place of, to vouch for. An Eravon is like a collateral or something that you leave with someone or that you take from someone, so that you can come back and collect, like in the story of Judah and Tamar, right? Right. We're not going to spend a lot of time, but that first page, this whole page, ayin resh bet, right? The next whole page, ayin resh bet, right? And then Aramaic versions of it, ayin resh bet aleph. Then the forms of the root where the bet is doubled, irbev, like erbuvia, sometimes this last letter in a root is doubled to intensify it. Arbev is also means, I think, to stir, right, in modern Hebrew, right? And then another page, ayin resh bet, ayin resh bet hey. Jastro spent a lot of time breaking down this word, which is interesting, and a reminder that whatever we think the word ha'arov means, we have to be okay not being able to fully know, okay? Let's jump into the Rashi, because the Rashi is kind of interesting here. Look, I mean, it's interesting everywhere, but that's at least start to break it down a bit. It's the second Rashi that's going to get to the Arov. Let's see if we can get there, but we're not going to rush. Back to Norm, Mashlich B'cha. First thing he deals with is why it's B'cha and not another preposition.
Mashlich B'cha. Menorah or
Migareh.
Migareh.
Okay, so the first thing he does is don't translate, reader, mashlich the way you normally would, which would mean to send, right? To send away, right? And by the way, normally, and this gets very nitty-gritty in grammar, to send away is in the pa'al sholeach or the pl mishaleach. This is the hif'il, to cause something to be sent, right? And it's different than lahashlich with a chaf, which is to cast away. Sounds the same, but it's a different word. So this is actually rare for the root shin lamed chet to be in the hifil. And Rashi is saying that particularly when you have the be afterwards, the preposition upon, it doesn't mean to send, but migarebacha. Did anyone know what the word migarebacha might mean in Hebrew?
Threaten.
It could mean to threaten. Here it means to kind of agitate, to agitate amongst you, right? To really to send something upon you that has been ordered. It's like what you would do if you smacked a beehive. You'd be migarebehem. You would be waking them
Inciting?
up. Inciting, right? Inciting is going to be helpful in a second. We get to the French, perhaps. Okay, keep going. V'chein. Okay, so Rashi sends us to a verse from the very end of the Torah that we read a couple of weeks ago. So look at the screen. Okay, so this is in the Parshat Hazinu, very, very hard Hebrew. And this is a part of the Parsha where God, through Moshe, is reminding the Israelites of what's going to happen to them if they don't follow the Torah. Mizei ra'av ulechume reshef. Some kind of like an overwhelming hunger. Food is going to go only the vultures. The ketev miriri, a deadly assault of a plague. V'shein behemot ashelech bam. I will blank the teeth of beasts, right? It's not just that I'm going to send them to you, I'm going to set them upon you, right? And it's translated here as I will send against them. Let's look at a different translation. Let's see however Fox translates that one. Teeth of beasts I will send out against them. So there's this sense of like stirring something up for it to be against you. Okay, so that's the first route that Rashi sends us to. Even though in Parshat Hazinu, it's not Hifil Mashlich, but it's PL Ashalach. Actually, could be PL or PAL, I'm not sure. Okay, keep going, Norm, Lashon.
I was going to say this could be colloquially translated as I will sick them on you.
I will sick them on you. Yes, absolutely. Right?
Okay. Bum, Lashon, Shamui. Shisui.
Okay, now, when Rashi tells us, I'm going to give you an easier word so you understand what it means, that's only helpful to us if we know what that word means, right? So let's look at Joshua and Shisui. It's on the screen. Shisui is the gerund of the PL form. So it's from lishasot, I suppose. So if you look at Jastro on the first entry here where the cursor is, shisa, to set on, like to set a dog on someone, right? To what a canine unit might do with their dog would be lishasototam or ligarot behem or lehashlich behem. So it's not just to release, but to incite something to do something violent. To sick is what Norm said before. Okay, and then Norm, keep reading.
Eza oro.
No, you have two. You missed two words.
Oh, I'm sorry. Intiter. Oh, intiter is the old French. Intiter, which in English is to incite.
Right. So now look at. So it's interesting how he writes it. He writes it as inciter, something like that, which I would think does refer to an old French word that means incite. It's interesting if you look at the Otsar Lashon Rashi on the screen. It's transliterated for the Rashi as the C and the T switch around, NTCL.
Some editions say different things.
Right. So now I have to turn to Rosemary. Is there a French word in TCR, which looks more like entice than incite, that means to stir something up, or did the T and the C get mixed up and it's a mistake? Any thoughts, Rosemary? And TCL, is that a word that you know?
Is there using old French to mean either entice or
to do both? That's very interesting because those are very different ideas. To entice and provoke, incite and provoke.
It is incite.
Incite, yeah. Okay, so that was an interesting little journey on the mashlich and the bacha. Okay, now Norm, let's get to any other questions on that. We can get to the arov.
The laws.
What's that?
Yeah.
The laws means in the French. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Rick.
Well, just because you brought it up, ein cha is nice. It goes with the ein tziter. So Rashi's, it sounds they're related. Ein cha and ein tziter, the tzadi first. Nah, I know.
That's kind of about saying like there's an sound in one of the words, and that reminds me of when my grandfather used to grunt and say so they must be related. Okay, I know we sometimes when you get down to that level, it gets a little silly, but then again this whole enterprise is. So let's keep going. Ha'arov. Move the mic closer to yourself.
Kol minei hachayos. Ro'os, Unhashim, the Akrabim, the Av Buvia.
The ear buvia. Okay, so Rashi is going to weigh in quickly on the sort of the wild beasts and creepy crawly side of the definition. So kol minei chayot, all types of animals, ra'ot, bad animals, unechashim, which are snakes, ba'akravim, and scorpions, in a yucky mixture, in an erbuvia. Keep going.
V'hoyu mashchisim bohem. V'yashtam.
So translate that. V'hayu mashchitim bahem. Lahashchit.
In a crowd.
What does lahashchit mean?
Lay havoc with them.
It really means to destroy, right? To devastate by means of them, to wreak havoc, right? So they were all these an admixture of yucky things, all of which are scary, through which or by which havoc would be wrought upon the Egyptians. Okay, so first that's Rashi's comment on what arov means, and he disagrees with those who might say it's insects. It's more attacking, biting animals. And then he adds something that goes back to something we said about 40 minutes ago about should we be discerning any pattern in these plagues. And he pulls a little bit from an extended midrash on from the Tanchuma, which if we were studying midrash, we could read the entire thing, that tries to patternize all 10 of these. So go ahead, Norm, let's start reading them. Ba'agada.
Ba'agada. The whole Maka, Umaka, Lamazu, Velamazu.
Okay, so he's saying we're now introducing the fourth plague. If you've been wondering, are these connected, particularly now since we move away from the water, right? We had water or water adjacent plagues. Yesh tam b'davar. There's a reason for this. What he means by this is, even though it doesn't say it explicitly, is the pattern and the laying out of these plagues. Be'agada in the Midrash. Again, in Midrash, he's always culling from, but now he's telling us explicitly. B'chol makeh makeh, for each and every plague. Lamazu, lamazu. Why this one, not this one? And he's going to give us a little bit of a taste of that. Go ahead.
B'tachsise, milchamos, mulachim ba'alehem.
Okay. I did not know the word tachsisi before I studied this Rashi.
He's giving advice to Netanyahu.
A little bit. If you look at the screen, this is Jastro on tachsis. It is it's from the root teches, which means to press or to squeeze, right? But a tachsis is a order, an array, an order of battle, an arrangement. So it's the way in which an army is arrayed to siege. So Rashi says everything that you're going to see in the plagues, even though it's not involving human soldiers, is representing, not allegorically, but actually an impact, the way in which an ancient king would besiege a city. B'tachsisei milchamot melachim ba'alehem. God is coming to Egypt in the way that the milchamot melachim, the wars that kings initiate, would happen in those types of arrangements. And he's going to give us...
My translation is tactic.
Oh, that's interesting. Tactic. Maybe that is it. Yeah. Sue, microphone.
We're clearly not a bunch of soldiers because tactics, we would have gotten there earlier. Is it related to tekes, the word tekes for ceremony? That tachsise?
Could be like an organized arrangement
like some
of a
kind of...
It's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Have you heard of the word tachsis, though, in modern Hebrew?
No.
Yeah. Could be tekes. Yeah. Okay, keep going. So we're gonna hear a few of them, and then I'll quickly, even though Rashi doesn't bring them, I'll quickly walk you through what the Tanchuma says for all 10. Go ahead. Shetzara, which besieges.
So it's the siege of a city.
Betchila.
Mekalkel
Mainoteha. What's the first thing that you do to make to put pressure on something you're besieging? You deprive them of the most important water, right? Because you try right. That's it's sort of like humane and inhumane at the same time, right? It's inhumane to deprive anyone of water, but if you're saying if you don't do this, like I now control your water, so surrender, in which case you'll have all the water, right? And this takes us back to Hezekiah's tunnel, right? If you read the source, there was a whole there's a whole long chapter on the engineer, who looked at the hoopoe bird and the different channels that he dug. The first thing you do is destroy the water source, because that hopefully will force them out, and then maybe you won't have to kill anyone, right? Not that they were doing it for noble reasons. So you destroy the water source, and that goes to which plague? Blood. Yeah, okay. Ve'achar kach, this one I love the most in the Midrash.
V'achar, and next, kach totin alehem umri'in b'shofaros u'yaram u'vahalom.
Once you've established control of their hydration, you announce with trumpet blasts and grand, maybe speakers, we're coming to get you, in order to liyaram, to make them afraid, u'levahalam, and to confuse them. And what does that line up with?
Frogs making noise.
The croaking of the frogs, right? It's the ribbitization of the frogs. V'chein, he says it explicitly. It's the next word after u'levahalam.
V'chein hasfardim mekarkarim v'homim.
So that's how the frogs are mekarkarim, groaning and ribbiting the homim and making their sound, and therefore frightening the people. So that's the first two plagues matched up against ancient warfare. V'chulei.
Kedisa b'midrash Rabbi Sanchuma.
As appears in the Midrash of Tanchuma. Very quickly, I'll share you the rest of them, and then we'll end class. Okay, so after you've announced, you send arrows into the city. Yoreh bahem chitzim. That's the lice that would kind of enter into the bodies of the Egyptians like arrows, right? After you do that, mevi alehem barbariim. You send upon them your wildest soldiers that you can't even control, to show that that the end is not going to be good for the people inside. That's the erov, right? There's no controlling snakes and scorpions. After that, you send magefot, plagues against their own animals, to also decrease their ability to sustain themselves. That's the dever. Afterwards, you might throw hot oil, right? You think of the Masada siege, right? You lay upon them things that will burn them. That's the shrin, that's the boils. You basically throw cannonballs at them. That's the barad. That is the hail coming down. Then you basically set upon them your entire population to overcome them. According to them, that's the arbeh, that's a locust. Once you successfully in the city, you take them captive and you put them in your dungeon. That's the darkness. And if it comes to that, you ultimately have to start killing them. This is very on the nose for us right now. This is too close. In terms of what the Jewish people are facing, and frankly what the Palestinians are facing in Gaza. But it does take what seems to be a disorder of the plagues and try to put them into an order, and that is really the calling card of the God of the Old Testament, of the Torah, right? Someone who is an orderer, is a taking of chaos and putting it into a particular pattern. So when we meet next week, we'll be on to the next verse. Kol kavod, Norm, who was on the entire time.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, please. Microphone.
Taxis
Yeah.
is actually a loan word from Greek, taxis, which means arrangement, order. Teches comes from this, is also from that same word.
So
Greek.
do we think that comes from tactic then?
No, tactic, well, I don't know about the origin of the word tactic, but the taxis is our array of battle or an arrangement. The meaning, the later meaning in modern times of stratagem, tactics, whatever, that happened as a much later meaning for the word.
God, language is fascinating. Thank you for that, Leonard. Have a good day, everyone. Have a good week. Be good to one another. Shalom al Yisrael.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.